right, we are live. Hello, everybody. We've got 18 people in a whole bunch of different spaces over here. 2 people on TikTok. Mr. Earth Rebirth, how many people do we have?
Handful, 3 right now, 4 coming
All right,
in.
we got a few folks over there too. So in total, we have probably close to 30 people. So as you all know, I'm Nehemiah Frank. You can call me Neo, founder, editor-in-chief of the Black Wall Street Times. I'm actually reporting to you today from Detroit with my colleague, Andrew Sartain of Mr. Earth Rebirth. Say hello, Andrew.
What's up, everybody?
I don't know if y'all can hear him or not. But anyways, listen, we're here. We're getting ready to go to the Bomisi Summit. But as you know, on Sunday, we had an incredibly impressive news day. Mayor Nichols actually released 45,000 pages of documents that had been sealed from the city of Tulsa for I guess, almost 100 years. And we are actually starting to go through it. We have AI, we have interns, we have college students and scholars that are already starting to kind of peel back all of the things that were hidden about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. And if you follow the Black Wall Street Times, you may have seen an op-ed out that I put out early this morning. And I actually got some responses. I got some emails about that op-ed. Thank you for sending those emails, because I think that if some of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight was actually released in 2021 and maybe during the court cases, maybe we would have got justice through the courts. And so I say we because, as many of you know, I am a descendant of families that survived the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. So we're going to get started. This is probably going to be one of many videos that we're going to do because, as I mentioned, it's 45,000 pages. But the initial big jump that I saw was Mayor Evans. He wrote a letter to the commissioners, which are tantamount to, or the equivalents of, today's city councilors. So we're going to go ahead and start looking at these documents. Super fascinating. And this is the first document. I'm going to read the document. We'll pause. We'll have a conversation. Andrew will jump in. So if you hear someone talking on the other side of, if you hear another voice, that's Andrew. He's here with me to attend the Bomisi Summit. So let's get started, y'all. Here we go. So this is one of the first documents that I saw that just stopped me completely. There's a lot of, and I'll say this, right? Because I know that we have folks who are of different races and different lived experiences. We're going to read this differently, right? We're not going to read this the same because Black folks have a different lived experience than white folks, and that's okay. But if we come together and have a healthy conversation, I think that that is part of our pathway to healing. And so let's let it begin. So here we go. So this message is from Mayor T.D. Evans, who was the mayor of Tulsa at the time of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. And he's writing a letter to the commissioners, which, as I said, are the equivalents of the counselors of today. So he starts off saying, "Gentlemen of the commission, in connection with the late Negro uprising, I desire to make some suggestions which may be helpful in arriving at a sound and correct solution of the various problems that now confront us." And so the way that I interpret documents, like I'll read a line or two, and then I'll kind of take a pause and interpret what that means. And then I'll move forward because that kind of just helps me, internalize and contextualize exactly what I'm reading. And so when I see that statement of Negro uprising, it was hardly a Negro uprising, the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. It was an assault on a Black community that was self-sustaining and that was brutally attacked, not because there was an assault between a black man and a black young man, because he was 19 at the time, and a 17-year-old Sarah Page, who was a white girl, right? It was more than that. But if you see that, if you look at the late Negro uprising, he's already framing this as it's it is the assault of the Negroes, that it is the plan of these black people to attack the white people by framing it as a Negro uprising, because they were specifically trying to protect a community member. That name was Dick Rowland. So let's go ahead and keep reading. So he says, since this trouble has happened, I know that you as well as myself have had all ordinary this part tripped me out too. Have had all ordinary mortals could do to attend to the duties of the present without a thought of a permanent policy to govern or our future action as to the burned district and various needs connected with the same. But we must now look to the future because of the lease of power that the people have placed in our hands, and seek to do things that are best suited to the needs of our great city. So, Andrew, whenever you read that, does anything particularly stick out to you in that sentence? Super long sentences, by the way.
Yeah, it is. It's very wordy. First off, but I mean, he's like you said, he's kind of double down on just this idea that there's a threat that they have to defend, rather than just the simple notion that you referred to earlier in our conversation about simply these people were advocating for something they needed, and he's trying to frame that as very much an attack on the city at this stage, without even getting anything specific yet.
Right. So remember what I said about how we see, like when we read things and we have different lived experiences, and that is okay. So one of the things that popped out to me in the way that he used this language was he used the phrase ordinary mortals. Mm-hmm. So are Black people not ordinary mortals? Or are, white people, or let's just say a white woman, right? Would a white woman be an ordinary mortal, or does that just specifically apply to white men? That was something that stopped me as a person of color. I'm reading this document and it says had all ordinary, mortals. And so that was just something that automatically jumped out. To me, it is a microaggression. Of course, at that time, the phrase microaggression didn't even exist. No one would have known what that was, but that is a triggering phrase to me as a person of color. Yeah. So let's just go ahead and keep going. So I ended up highlighting the next part. I highlighted this because, as you know, I wrote an op-ed in the Black Wall Street Times and published it earlier this morning. The second I knew that this 45-page document, or the documents were going to be released, I could not sleep. I wanted to just try to get through as much of it as possible to see if there were any names listed to, possible perpetrators of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, which I kind of found something that may lead to that. So the highlighted portion of this, it is fitting that we first remember and thank those officers, both regular and special members of the National Guard, of the Legion, and the great number of good citizens who risked their lives to defend the city. Now, for those who aren't familiar with the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, for the longest time, it has been rumored, because we didn't have an actual document that said that this thing happened. But here we have the mayor of Tulsa in 1921 saying that this thing happened. So it's more than just an oral history. We actually have some written language that connects the oral history to an eyewitness account of what happened. And what better eyewitness to have than the actual mayor of the city, an elected official. And so in 1921, the police officers and the National Guard actually gave regular citizens, some of them may have been trained because they were just coming back from World War I, and some of them were not trained, but they were given guns because they were white and there was a supposed Negro uprising. And so regular citizens were actually given guns to go into the Greenwood district or Black Wall Street to hunt down, collect, or kill Black people who were living in the district. And this is the mayor confirming that that actually happened. So I just want to read it again. It stopped me. I was like, wow, the mayor is actually saying that this thing happened. It is fitting that we first remember and thank those officers, right? Both regular and special members, special, comma, members of the National Guard, comma, of the Legion, and the great number of good citizens who risked their lives to defend the city. So I didn't know what Legion was. I had to go and look that up. And so the Legions, they were trained soldiers who had come back from World War I. So I wanted to know who that was. That's what it is, if you're wondering. So as I continue to read the document, you're probably going to see that pop up more than a few times. So we're going to go to the next one. So a list of their names should be preserved, that the people may in the future remember them in some fitting manner for their valiant fight to protect Tulsa and make her safe for the future. Just think about that. Like when you see a statement like that, like what comes to mind for you?
My first thought is, where's that list of names?
Right.
Y'all were so proud to defend, preserve that list. Where's that list now?
Right. So I was out to dinner yesterday with some advocates and colleagues of mine. One of them is the infamous Dr. Tiffany Crutcher. And I was just jumping up and down, like, oh my God, could there possibly be a list of names of some of the perpetrators of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre? The fact that the mayor even mentioned this leads me to believe that there is a possibility of some sort of, list of, who these people are. Some of these people are actually, one person is listed in here, and that'll be revealed soon. So let's just go ahead and keep reading. So also the Red Cross, the good work of the churches, Salvation Army, and all other organizations and citizens who helped following this disaster should receive the thanks of the whole community. Perhaps maybe just the white community, right? Because I mean, our shit was all burnt down. All right, so let's go to the next paragraph. So I said, what is that?
Adjutant?
Adjutant, not sure what that legal term means, but General Barrett, well, we know what that is, won a place in the hearts of Tulsans, which time will not efface. So we got a general here. There's an actual name, General Barrett. We don't know what his first name is, but I guess this person was one of the key perpetrators of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. This is the first time where we actually have a name of someone who was directly involved that has been revealed to us in the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. So officers, soldiers, and citizens who worked with him found him a man, a general, and a good citizen. It was a pleasure to work with him and his staff and the National Guard under his command.
Well, this next paragraph definitely has some names. So.
The crazy thing about that is like, it just, and I'm not a legal scholar at all, but when I read that, he says, work with him. So the mayor of Tulsa is working with this general to destroy this Black community, to destroy our community. That's literally what that, to me, what that says. Now we got to get someone like an attorney, Demario Solomon Simmons, or an Eric Harris. We've got to get someone to be able to further explain this to us, and perhaps we can do another Substack live in the future where they're able to further explain, where this document can point to. So the next paragraph, here we go. So the many sleepless nights put in by Police Commissioner Atkinson in directing his forces made a severe test upon the strength of any official, but he is rewarded by knowing that he protected the city and did his full duty. Now, here's the thing about that. Here's something that we were told. This is oral history, right? The oral history is that the white mob was so overwhelming that the police could not be involved, that they couldn't stop the mob. But in this document, the mayor himself is saying that what? That the police commissioner Atkinson, is directly involved in the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, in the destruction of the Greenwood District that led to 300 Black people being massacred and buried in mass graves all across the city of Tulsa. That's insane.
Yeah,
now
horrifying it, not even just
horrifying.
It's blatantly just saying they're rewarding him.
So we have two names of generals, I guess you can call them, who were directly involved in the massacre. And you have a police commissioner who is directly involved. So you would wonder, that the police union would not want this type of information to go out. And I heard that there was a lot of, back and forth between the city and the FOP about releasing this document, because you have the police commissioner of Tulsa directing his forces into the Greenwood District. This document is the most explosive history I have ever read about our city, ever. Now, here's another thing about Atkinson. If you've been following me for a while, you know that in 2021, we produced a magazine called Greenwood 100. Greenwood 100 is our own 1619 project for Tulsa. So it goes over the history of pre-state, statehood, the massacre, urban renewal, all the way up today. I had the pleasure of being able to go with one of our photographers at the time, Mike Creef. We went to the University of Tulsa Library. We looked at their archive. We looked at an actual Klan document. And Atkinson was listed as a member of the Klan, of a Klan roster from the 1920s. Wow. Now that roster is a little bit older than the 1921 race massacre. I want to say that roster started in 1926. And I was wondering if it could possibly link me back to the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. And the interesting thing about history is you learn different pieces over time, and then there will come a point where you're able to kind of pull a thread and tie them all together. And this is one of those moments where we're able to pull that thread, because Atkinson is a member of the Klan, but also in 1921, he's the police commissioner who, as in this document says, per the mayor's words himself, directing his forces into the Greenwood District. I mean, it doesn't get any more evident than that. So we'll keep going.
Yeah, this actually, they mentioned several of those officers in here. It's kind of wild.
Wow. Okay, so here we go. So the same may be said of Major T.C. Hopkins, Major C.F. Hopkins, Major Fuller, Captain Serber, Captain Galloway, Major Ballin, Lieutenant Dunlap, Lieutenant Batchelor, Lieutenant Boschel, Lieutenant Sudan, Lieutenant and Colonel Rooney, Lieutenant Colonel P.J. Hurley, Major Alva J. Niles, Captain Lewis. I mean, all of these names, all of these people directly involved. We have names, y'all, of actual perpetrators of the 1921 Tulsa race massacre. These are the people who killed people who were running for their lives, Black people who were hiding in their houses, who eventually would burn to death because they burned everything. They dropped bombs from planes. These are people who probably killed women and children as well. Because even as of yesterday, I went to the city council meeting and they were voting on $1 million budget for the continuation of the mass graves excavation that's been taking place. And Christy Williams, who is a notable community leader in the Greenwood community in Tulsa, was one of the people who actually had the honor of helping excavate. And she said that she actually pulled women and children's bodies out of the mass grave that was found in Oak Lawn Cemetery. And those bodies were happened to have bullet fragments in them. So some of these very lieutenants and majors who we just listed may actually have shot, women and children at the time of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. And then it goes on to say who directed the National Guards and the boys of the American Legion. And again, for those who just joined us, because I know it looks like we have like 100 and something folks watching. The American Legion were former World War I veterans who joined the fight. So we'll keep going. So it says, now while I can't at this time cover all subjects that possibly should be conferred or brought to your attention, yet a few points are suggested to mind. First responsibility, let the blame for this Negro uprising lie right where it belongs, on those armed Negroes and their followers who started this trouble and who instigated it, and any person who seek to put half of the blame on the white people are wrong and should be told so in no certain terms. We are told that twice before we assumed power as city officials, that armed mobs of Negroes visited the white section of the city and made certain demands under threats of force. So I'm going to go to the next page. In this administration, we are not prophets, but we wager that trip number 2 will not take place soon. So we're going to go to the next one. Second, no cause for this trouble. Even when these Negroes were at the jail, there still was no reason for their making any trouble. So just to kind of give you guys some context, the reason why the Negroes, right, the Black people went to the Tulsa, and they actually went to the courthouse. The reason why they went to the jail and then eventually the courthouse was because Dick Rowland was being held. He was a 19-year-old shoe shiner in the Greenwood district who was accused of assaulting Sarah Page, a 17-year-old white female elevator operator. And at that time, that being a Black person, a Black male especially, involved in anything that had to do with a white woman could have meant your life. And so the community, Black Wall Street, the Greenwood district, members of that community, they were terrified that Dick Rowland could have possibly been lynched. And so let's continue. They were assured over and over again that the prisoner had by the sheriff was safe, that no one could get him. No organized mob was in the act of getting him, nor was there any danger apparent that they would get him. Now, that's the perspective of what the mayor said. The mayor is a white privileged man, probably the descendant of slave owners, of people who own slaves, like, our past mayor, G.T. Bynum. So he's coming from this mindset that white people are incapable of hurting Negroes, but we know different, right? We definitely know different. So he goes on to say the occasion brought quickly around the courthouse hundreds of men, women, and children, as is usually the case when any rumor of this nature gets in the air. Child.
So much to unpack.
When I tell y'all that we have to unpack this shit, we have to unpack this. Because if you know anything about lynching history in this country, you know that it was a family affair, that white men, that white women and children, and even the damn dog would have been there to witness the lynching of a Negro. And that is what is happening here. So to give you some more context, because it's not in this letter here, the Tulsa Tribune printed an article about I guess what allegedly happened, and the title was "Nab Negro for Assaulting a White Female." Now, there was another article that supposedly went out with a controversial title, but that was pulled, that we can't find anywhere. But it had something to do with lynching tonight, or a Negro is to be lynched tonight in Tulsa for assaulting a white woman. And so you think, how would these people know to come?
Right.
And
no
not
internet, no TV.
Right. There's no internet, there's no television. All they have is, print or word of mouth. Right?
And that sentence in particular for me, if you look at it from a logic standpoint, what drives me crazy about that is they're painting this as the community's in danger. The wide area of the community's in danger. Armed Black people are coming and they're going to put us in danger. So the response is for women and children to go hang out at the courthouse in public. And then the second part of that to literally say, usually the case when any rumor of this nature gets in the air, how often is anything like this happening? What you're referring to is definitely the lynching. That's the usual nature you're referring to. It's not about the attack on the community.
That's right.
By Black people that you're saying is a danger. It's the fact that this is a regular occurrence, and
right?
Everybody's coming out to see it.
Everyone is coming out to see it. They're bringing, because if these Negroes were so dangerous, you would not bring women or children out there.
Yeah.
It would just be the men. So we're going to keep reading, y'all, because this stuff is so juicy and interesting. All right, so let's see here. Where did I leave off?
This nature gets in the air.
Yep. Okay. So, this nature gets in the air. The great majority of white people who ran in were wholly unarmed. Why were they unarmed? Because they thought that they were about to see some entertaining shit. That's why they were unarmed. There was every reason to believe that when these Negroes knew their prisoner was safe, that the trouble would immediately stop, because usually when a cause is removed, there will be no effect. A shot fired by a full Black person, evidently without cause, set the whole affair going and set the whole fires of racial war and hatred going in all their fury. So there's two things about this, right? First of all, of course, the way that he, dehumanized this person who was trying to, it could have very well been the relative of Dick Rowland. It could have been his dad. It could have been someone, right? That was close to him. And there's no telling, what happened. The fact is that on both sides, we know that a gunshot was fired. We don't know from which side. We just know that there was a gunshot that fired that's ignited the full-on violence that ultimately ended in the destruction of Black Wall Street in 1921. But the interesting phrase of racial war, that really popped out to me as well. So anyways, we're going to keep reading. So the third officers. For the officers in the heart of the city and in the presence of hundreds of men, women, and children, so it's a second reference right there, to have pitched a battle by shooting would have meant the lives of many women, men, women, and children who were in the crowd, and our list of killed and wounded might have been 100 or 200 people. It is the credit of these men who defended the city that night, being officers, National Guards, he lists them again, and Legion men, that they were wise enough to see this and to gradually work these disturbers back to the Negro section. It's a typo. It says wection, but I'm pretty sure they meant to say section. I imagine if you're typing on a typewriter back then that you can't just, I don't think whiteout was invented back then. So they just figured they'll figure it out. We'll keep going. So it says, all this was done without $1 loss of property by fire in the heart of Tulsa and with very minimum of loss of life or personal injury. That is something right there.
Yeah. That was like just a blatant, like passive aggressive insult. Like, well, the important stuff, nothing happened.
Yeah, nothing happened to the white people stuff, but the Black folks, sorry. Actually, we're not sorry. We want y'all gone.
All right.
So we keep going. Here we go. Fourth place. It is the judgment of many wise heads in Tulsa. Oh yeah, let me pause really fast because I saw this little thing pop up on my TikTok. We have a Substack, y'all. This stuff we actually have bills like everybody else. We have employees and people that do this work that need to be paid. So if you want to subscribe to our Substack for $8 a month or just donate, $80 for the year, you can totally do that. You get a little discount if you do that. And it helps us continue to do this work. Plus, we are like 20. How far away from trying to reach our first goal on Substack?
We're 25 away.
We're 25
from 100.
25 Substack Substack subscribers who pay monthly. We're 25 away from having that, and so our goal was to try to do that in 30 days, and we're almost there. So please do that. All right. So anyways, we're gonna keep on, but we don't do this for money. We just got bills like everybody else, and this stuff takes time. So hopefully you'll understand that. All right, so fourth place. Okay, so it is the judgment of many wise heads in Tulsa based upon observation of a number of years that this uprising was inevitable. So what like when you see that line, like how do you interpret that?
Why would this be inevitable? That to me sounds more like you're saying if you replace the word uprising with massacre, they're saying the quiet part out loud. We were going to make this happen, whether
right.
there was an intention that we planned this and we just needed our excuse.
We knew that we were going to get into it with the Black folks. Yeah. All right. If that be true and this judgment had to come upon us, then I say it was good generalship to let this destruction. That is wild. Now, this is another wild section that I did not highlight because whenever you're writing an op-ed, you can't write too much because people will stop reading, right? But check this out. I want to read this part again. That this uprising was inevitable. If that be true and this judgment had to come upon us, then I say it was good generalship to let the destruction come to that section where the trouble was hatched up, put in motion, and where it had its inception. So he's pretty much saying that
they had it coming to them.
Yeah. Like they had it coming. And then just a reminder, because I know like we just got 38 more people watching this, and I'm so happy that y'all are following us. The mayor of Tulsa, this is an elected official that's saying that let the destruction come. We welcome the instruction. We welcome the destruction and the killing of innocent Negroes because they are prone to criminality, right? That's what that's saying. So let's continue. Fifth wrongs. All regret the wrongs that fall upon the innocent Negroes, and that they should receive such help as we can give them if within our power. It, however, is true of any, now listen to the term that he uses here specifically. It, however, is true of any warfare that the fortunes of war fall upon the innocent along with the guilty. This is true of any conflict, invasion, or uprising. Think what would have happened had the Allies marched to Berlin. Now, just think about that. He uses the term not riot, he uses the term warfare. Because in a riot, people may not necessarily die, right? Shit gets tore up, but nobody has to die in a riot. But what he's saying is that this was a war and that innocent people have lost their lives. He's saying this without saying it because he's using this word warfare.
And to compare it to the World War at the same time is just the audacity as well.
Yeah. All right, let's keep it going. 6 firearms. We are told that the colored section, the Negroes had guns in their homes and ammunition to use in such weapons. When in the course of the last 25 years or more, has that no been true? I guess so y'all look, this is their date and type. They couldn't make no grammatical, so I'm reading it as it is as an editor. That's how I'm reading it. But I think what he meant to say was, has that not been true? And where is the law by which anyone can prevent Negroes having guns in their homes? Question. We all know the law, both state and city, allows this, and so far as I know, always has allowed it. In the past 14 years, I have often had occasions in dealing in land and farm loans in the Creek Nation particularly, to be in many Negro homes. It has been much the exception to find any Negro house or cabin where there was not 1 or 2 shotguns or revolvers and plenty of ammunition. Now, here's something that we got to think about, right? Even today, Oklahoma is an open carry state. Mm-hmm. Anybody can have a gun in their home, no matter what your race is. You know, if you have a criminal record, if it's a felony, you can't have a gun. But back then, none of those laws existed. Oklahoma was still a fairly new state. But also, a lot of these Black people, besides the ones that marched with indigenous folks who were being forcibly removed from their lands, they had guns. It was a part of, like, you know, rural life.
Yeah, well, 100 years ago, there was also more hunting for survival even
right.
in these communities than there is now. So it wouldn't have just been inherently for self-defense.
That's right.
Like you would consider today, but they could have been using it for food.
And that was really what they were using it for back then.
Yeah.
You know, folks were still hunting and doing those things back then. So keep going. I venture to say that this very day, within a radius of 25 miles of Tulsa, enough firearms can be obtained from Negroes' homes alone to equip 500 men and prepare them for a pretty fair state of warfare. So here's the thing. Again, Oklahoma is still a very rural state. You have a lot of black towns that have existed. So I think that that's probably what he was referring to. So I know a lot of white folks or just people, period. We got black people that don't even know that Oklahoma was almost became a black state at one point. A lot of black people were migrating there. And even after emancipation, there was a wave of black folks that were moving to Oklahoma and a whole bunch of other places across the country. That's how my family got there. And even after the massacre on my mother's side, once Black Wall Street was rebuilt, after the massacre, they ended up going to Tulsa, migrated from Louisiana. So people were flocking there. And they were bringing their guns, not to kill white people or to kill anybody, but that was just a part of the culture, right? Got to eat, got to live, got to survive. All right, I venture to say that this very day within a radius of 25 miles, and okay, already read that part, so warfare. So I think another thing that he's doing here is he's kind of doing what Trump does a lot, which is trying to, propagandize that black people are dangerous and that we have to get them away from us, right? That's why Jim Crow exists. That's the reason why we need to destroy the Negro section of town.
Right. Yeah. Similar immigrant rhetoric. It's just there's inevitable violence if we leave them here. It has to be war against them. Otherwise, it'll get worse than that.
Right. They're going to take something from you. So we got to get rid of them. All right. So seventh, here we go. Nothing new. These uprisings are not. Now, this really creeped me out, this part right here, this section. Nothing new. These uprisings are not by any means new or novel, and they are no longer confined below the Mason-Dixon line. So what he's pretty much talking about, he's referencing the Red Summer. And the Red Summer was when there were a lot of racial violence directed towards black people across the country. So you've got, this happening in St. Louis, you have this happening in Chicago, racial violence taking place in these cities where white mobs attack black business districts, black residents to try to chase them out of town, extinguish their vote, extinguish what little economic power that they have built just two generations out of slavery. So we're going to keep going here. The cities are legion who have had more or less of riot trouble. Will law-abiding citizens cease businesses with the city of Tulsa or refrain from coming here on account of having had trouble of this kind? So I think what he's trying to do at this point is say that just because we had a race massacre or a race war or a racial violence doesn't mean that Tulsa is going to have this stain on it, even though it did, and it still does today. That people will continue to come here because they want opportunity. And don't worry about the Negroes. This happens in every American city where there are black people. They get attacked, they act up, and we attack them.
Just another day defending our space.
Just another day defending our space. Exactly. All right, let's keep going, y'all. Have you heard of anybody saying here? Yeah, exactly, and it's confirmed here. Have you heard of anybody staying out of Washington, D.C. because there was race trouble there? The mayor asks. Chicago killed something like 2,000 Negroes not long ago, and I believe the trouble lasted several days there. Yet does any businessman stay out of Chicago or refuse to invest in property there on this account? Jesus Christ.
Wow.
When I read that line, my brain exploded.
Yeah.
For two reasons.
He's just gonna cite other massacres.
Yeah, cited other massacres to defend the city of Tulsa's, reason to kill a bunch of innocent black people. But also the fact that he mentioned that Chicago had 2,000 Negroes or 2,000 black people that may have been massacred or been killed.
Right.
And so I'm like, where's that history?
Yeah. What year was that?
Because if that happened, that means that Chicago would have had the largest, killing the largest killing of black people in this country. Right now, it stands that Tulsa has the largest number of black people killed in any type of racial violence directed towards a racial group, right? But that's saying that it actually happened in Chicago. So we don't know. That's some history that is maybe new to me. Maybe he was just exaggerating. Trump exaggerates all the time. Maybe that's just what he was doing here. But let's keep going. All right. The courthouse was destroyed in similar trouble in Omaha, and yet the uprising was not put down there nearly so quickly as in this city. Yet does anybody refrain from going to Omaha because of that affair? East St. Louis was visited by an outbreak far more serious than that in this city. Yet none of us think of staying away from St. Louis. This list might be extended to cover many pages and yet not exhaust all the illustrations. Let us immediately get to the other side, the fact that everything is quiet in our city, that this menace has been fully conquered, and that we are going along in a normal condition, and it will have a great influence to overcome the hundreds of wild rumors that have gone over the country. My God. Damn. Just like the lack of respect for human life. This is the mayor of Tulsa in 1921 saying this stuff. Just let that seep in. That it is a normal occurrence for city officials to attack their residents if they're Black. And then afterwards, you should just continue on with business as usual.
And to just like cite other
others.
Examples across the country. Like, see, other places do it. We're all good.
Yeah, we're good here. And then the way that he said that, fully conquered.
Right.
As if it were some sort of contest or game. Or gain, right? As the truth gradually reaches the outside, 99% of the prejudices will be overcome. Next, let us look to a few general ideas pertaining to Reconstruction. Now, here's the erasure part. 1, let us not shrink the responsibility of doing that which is best for all, both Black and white. 2, let every transaction pertaining to the rights of all these property owners, both Black and white, be characterized by the absolute honesty and see that each gets in the parlance of the streets a square deal. I'm not quite sure what that meant, what they mean by that, but I guess it's Old English, right? From that time, that's how they spoke. 3, a large portion of this district is well suited for industrial purposes.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
Better. What's best for everybody, but what's best for everybody is for us to use it for industrial.
That's purposes. Right, because who's going to own those buildings, right? Or own those companies.
Right.
Better adapted for these purposes than for residences. Once it is assured that it will be so used, there will be a decided rise in value, which will give the property owners more for the naked ground than his whole property was worth before the fire. Let the Negro settlement be placed farther to the north and east. So the mayor is saying, we don't want y'all here. We don't want y'all Black asses here. It would be good to just move them further away. So the plan is to take Greenwood at this point. The mayor is saying that he wants these Black people moved, even though they worked their entire lives to become property and land owners. Let's just move them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, they have to prove that they own the land in the first place.
Right.
With all of the documents, after you burnt their documents and everything down.
Yeah.
So let's continue. We should immediately get in touch with all the railroads with the view to establish a union station on this ground. The location is ideal and all the railroads convenient. From our acquaintance with all conditions, after several days for Settling back to a normal state, I believe a committee of citizens can now well be selected to constitute the legally appointed committee for the city and to be known as a reconstruction committee, and I recommend such action. So let's see who these people are that he's trying to recommend. We're going to go to the next one. We're almost done, y'all. And for the 142 people, thank you for joining us. So let's keep it pushing. Let's keep going, y'all. This is the last one. And remember, there's 45,000 pages, and this is just one.
Yeah, we
or this is just three. This is just three. I guess it's like a page and a half out of the 45,000 pages that have just newly been released since Mayor Nichols took office, and on Sunday allowed the city to go ahead and publish these new documents. Many that go over the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. So here we go. It is well in the section of this committee, selection of this committee, that we fully comprehend just the nature of the locality and the people with whom they must come in contact. Many well-known men in other lines could not handle this section to the best advantage. Persons who have lived here many years have helped blaze the way for greater Tulsa, who know every foot of the ground and who are all well acquainted with these colored people, and who are honest and reliable and can best handle this position. I believe a committee consisting of the following men will be equal to the greater task of abiding and guiding us to a conclusion beneficial to all. Now, y'all remember when I told y'all, for those who have been following from the beginning of this, emergency cast or last minute live stream that we're doing, and this is the first time we're streaming on Substack. So hello to all of those people who are on Substack. We have the clan roster. So remember, I told you that we have the clan roster. When I tell you that a lot of these names look familiar to me, and one name that we absolutely know who was a member of the clan is Tate Brady. So as you can see, his name is on there, W.T. Brady.
So just to clarify, have you seen this list of this committee before?
Never seen this list ever. This is the first time I'm seeing this list.
Wow.
So these are people who wanted to take over the Greenwood, or who were being considered to be on this committee that would reconstruct Greenwood. And here's the thing: none of them are Black.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are Black. So what is that?
I wonder how many of them are industrial developers.
Yeah. My guess, probably a good handful of them. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if they were probably all in bed together.
Yeah.
Because that was, what they wanted to do. They wanted to take that district because, they saw opportunity and money for themselves. And had, a disregard for the people who had worked so hard to become landowners and eventually build their businesses and their residence in the Greenwood district. Mm-hmm. So after seeing that document, what are your final thoughts tonight of this?
I mean, to me, it's wild to see L in one letter downplaying or exaggerating the danger coming from the Black community, while also admitting, again, this kind of entertainment aspect of it being there that's obviously not endangered while they're there, but then also this kind of bragging of how successful they were at it, and then again downplaying by comparing it to other disasters around the country. No big deal. Yeah, we did this. We're really proud of ourselves for it, but other people do it too, and just moving on from it. It's the pride in it that's just so doubling and tripling down on the sociopathness of it. It's wild.
Is there anything that particularly like stuck out to you in the
I'm
mayor's?
very surprised how many names are listed.
Yeah.
Just that, like, again, just how proud, and now they're just like, all right, we know this is going to be in history. And I think in my mind, I think of what moment in history was it? The next mayor, or was it 3 mayors later that these names really didn't want to be so public? They didn't want these to be names they're proud of.
Right.
Like, where was that moment? Was it 2 years later? Was it 20 years later? Was it 50? And I think about that because obviously in this moment there was no remorse. They didn't feel.
Yeah.
At what point did history
they were calling
start
them
to catch up to
heroes.
them?
Yeah, they
right.
were being called heroes for defending Tulsa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I guess the next thing that we'll probably end up doing is going back to that Klan roster and seeing if some of these additional names were in fact on that later Klan roster. And then we could just link them.
Yeah.
I think that that'll probably be something that we'll definitely do next. And guess what, y'all? We already have the Klan roster. Nobody can take it from us. Nobody can hide it, hide it from us, because this document has clearly been hidden for way too long. And honestly, I think that, you know, if attorneys would have had a document like this, maybe the court cases would have been, you know, a lot different than, you know, a denied, because the city was directly responsible. Even the mayor himself was responsible for the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre. Well, anyways, y'all, it's late here in Detroit, and we have a long day tomorrow because we are at the BOMICI Summit. And I hope y'all have a good night. Be safe. And if you get a chance, tell the mayor, the new mayor of Tulsa, the first Black mayor of Tulsa, thank you for this first giant step towards repair, which is the $105 million Greenwood Trust, which many are calling a reparations plan. Justice for Greenwood. Y'all have a wonderful evening. Hey, y'all, since there are still 156 people watching this live, please donate to our Substack, or you can go to Ribbon and on the Black Wall Street Times website, and you can donate there. We're looking to get as many small donors as possible. This administration has been very unfair to media, especially Black media. And we know that at some point they're going to start targeting philanthropic organizations who are supporting us. So please give us a solid foundation in the event that folks begin to get jittery. Peace.